So quick note before jumping in. I actually recorded this video in August before the announcement was given to say that JJK would end in 5 chapters or so. And I ended up having to revise and re-record some of this content. This is actually the third revision, the third time re-recording, because I recorded and then I recorded to make changes, and then I decided I wanted to show my face to save time on editing. So third recording. Yeah, I want to start by saying I'm obviously not an author, and in no way am I saying that what I thought was better than what Gege delivered. It's just a few thoughts about what I think could have made the Culling Games a little cooler or so. The Culling Games to me is, the stuff after Shibuya, but before the Shinjuku Showdown. One last thing before I get started. I started a manga podcast recently, along with some other YouTubers like The Greek Weeb, Papa Traffy, Knox from Project Manga, and we review a bunch of manga, and we'll be dropping at least one video a week talking about chapters as they come out. If you're a fan of stuff like Chainsaw Man, Kagurabachi, Ichi the Witch, Ranger Reject, Don to Don, go check it out. It's called Panel Focus, and the link will be down in the description below. With that out of the way, this is my thoughts for how the Culling Games itself as an arc could have been improved. Go easy on me though. Like I said, I'm not trying to disrespect Gege, just having some fun giving my thoughts on the arc. For starters, if you're watching this video, then JJK has obviously already ended, and when I had the idea for the video, we were still in Yuji's domain, and all of the original elements from the Culling Games were already gone besides the binding vow that Kenjaku had made to merge all of Japan with Tengen to create this huge super curse once every player other than himself, Sukuna, and Urame were killed. And I think it was more than safe to say that at that point there wouldn't be any more real conversations had about the games themselves or the rules. Since the Culling Games had become more of an afterthought by the time Sukuna and Gojo started their battle, I think it would have felt better if the Culling Games was something that was meant to end at some point, but maybe with some of the greater consequences being present after the fact. There are a few reasons I say this, and I'll get to them, but for one, the Culling Games ritual was essentially a massive battle royale. Basically one big game of Fortnite or Apex Legends or whatever battle royale that you're familiar with. And we know this because Kenjaku summoned or invited hundreds of thousands of people to join in these arena-like colonies around Japan, and when characters enter these colonies, they were randomly teleported and dropped in different locations. We see this with Yuji and Megami entering and being separated, and Yuji walking into the barrier, but on the other side he appears midair, falling to his death unless he can somehow stop his fall. With the battle royale type arc, I think a lot of the small battles we got, like Yuji versus the helicopter head guy, were good things to have. I think there should have been slightly more of this that played a little more with the setting. Large areas like Japan were turned into a war zone, and we saw that in the Sendai colony with Yuta, that a good amount of people didn't leave. I wish we could have seen a little more of that action where regular people were involved. Maybe a brawl would send fighters crashing through a home of a family who couldn't afford to leave and didn't take the threat of the Culling Games seriously, and curses could attack and kill people while they were minding their own business, eating breakfast or something like that. Just something to make it feel more like they were in a city and that it was alive. Besides Yuta and the people who were obviously placed in colonies to be opponents, there aren't any other instances of people that get caught in the crossfire. I'll touch back on this in a little more in a bit, but I'll touch on perfect preparation and the Fight Club arc too. So personally, I think both of these were fine as is. I wouldn't touch them. I know a lot of people were mad that Maki killing her entire clan was not talked about, and for a long time I think I kind of missed the point. To me it felt like people wanted her to pay for her crimes, and it reminded me of that one scene in Batman where Lucius Fox mocks that Wayne Enterprises employee for trying to blackmail his boss, who he suspects dresses up in full armor and beats criminals with his bare hands at night. And I thought, what the hell do y'all want them to do about it? She's Maki. And nah, I mean, I get it now. People just wanted it to be brought up and acknowledged, since it created a supposed power vacuum with one of the 3 clans removed. Honestly, the only thing I'd change about this is that maybe at the end or at some point later, showing the Gojo clan representative who agreed to remove the Zenin from the big 3, even if it was just the only Gojo they could find and it was just some frail old woman being forced by Kenjaku, the fact that the Kamo clan and the Gojo clan agreed never sat right with me, because who was the Gojo member? As far as the Fight Club with Hikari goes, I think it was perfect, no changes. Back to what I was saying with the actual colonies though, and the games. When it comes to the things that actually did happen in Colony 1 with Yuji and Higuruma and Megami with Reggie and his cronies, another perfect batch of chapters, no notes. When it comes to Sendai though, with Yuta and his 4-way battle, like I said, the only thing I wish was that there was more of the stuff where we see him escorting the civilians. The battle between these 4 here is perfect, and honestly I feel like his colony makes the least sense to have civilians because of how strong the competitors were. Not to say it's bad that Yutsu was escorting people, but this was arguably the toughest colony as far as fighters go. But there were like a lot of normal people here. I'm not familiar with Sendai as a place, so maybe it's a heavily populated area, so I can't really say much. And the fighters were all in a deadlock, basically rock, paper, scissoring each other into not moving, but it's still an interesting choice to have this as the one place where we see regular folks. As far as the content in the Sendai colony though, perfect again, no notes. The only thing I wish is that the domain clash that happened was used to foreshadow a later battle where it would be successful. Maybe not in the same way though. I would have loved to see if 2 or more domains could have worked together in unison in some sort of beneficial way, like maybe Higuruma's domain expansion used with Hikari's when Hikari and Higuruma both entered the battlefield where Sukuna was located. With Hikari and Kashimo's colony is where I think things could have been really interesting and changed up the game in a big way. I don't think there's any issues with Hikari versus Charles personally. It was a fun fight and it showed an inexperienced sorcerer versus one of the heavy hitters. But after that, when Hikari meets Kashimo is where I might change things. First off, Kashimo was a player who had accumulated 200 points. The only person we saw to do this, meaning he had gone around killing sorcerers and curses left and right until he added his first rule. The change I propose does go against his goal a bit, but I think it could have been one of more interesting things that could have been done with the points. During Hikari and Kashimo's battle, Kashimo is pretty much killing Hikari over and over, and because of his domain expansion, his body continuously heals itself. If it weren't for their deal where Hikari would tell him where Sukuna was if he won, and if Hikari won, then Kashimo would fork up his points, then I think Kashimo could have added a rule easily to really hurt Hikari and stop his fighting style. I don't know how it will work in the long run, but this is also part of why I said before that, I would have made it so that the game itself ends, but some of the long-lasting effects, stick around. Maybe this wouldn't be one of them, but I think if Kashimo really wanted to, he could have proposed a rule to the Kogane that made it so that players had to spend points to activate their domain. This would immediately shut down Hikari in their fight, because imagine a game where he proposed a rule where you needed to spend points to activate your curse technique, for the day. Spending the 100 would have taken Kashimo down to 0, and Hikari was already there. Kashimo could have then maybe killed Panda for 5 points, because Panda doesn't do anything for the rest of the story. So kill Panda for like 5 points, then allowing him to, spend the 5 to use his technique and put Hikari at a massive disadvantage. Ultimately, it didn't happen like I thought, or, said, because of their deal and Kashimo's personality, but imagine the things that could have come from someone abusing the rules or making rules that negatively impacted players or civilians. Imagine a rule where you have to pay points in order to leave colonies, and one character is running for their life, and right as they reach the barrier and try to exit, the Kogane pops up and says, "That'll be 20 points, please," to someone who's just short of the fee. Things like this would have obviously gone away when the games ended, which in my vision would be when Gojo was freed, so that him and Sukuna could battle without these sorts of restrictions. With the Maki colony, honestly, this was the only one I straight up had feelings of dislike for, and it wasn't for the reasons that people talk about on Twitter. When this colony was playing out, I saw a ton of comments from people who complained about the 2 guys that randomly showed up and helped Maki, but I actually think that was fine and fit with the battle royale aspect of the arc. To me, it made sense that they showed up, but they are a part of why I dislike the arc too. The reason I didn't like Maki's colony was because of Naoya, really. Let me first say that there was nothing wrong with the actual battle with Naoya itself, but the last fight we saw Maki in was versus Naoya. Then we don't see Maki for like, I don't know, 50 chapters, and then when we do, the person she fights is Naoya. It just didn't sit right with me, and I think that this colony would have flowed a lot better if there was just one more, moment before. Maybe Maki stumbles on the 2 random guys as they're fighting off curses and other sorcerers, and somehow Maki ends up tired or beat up a little from a long battle, and then right as things were looking like it was over, Curse Worm Naoya shows up, and it feels like a situation that Maki might not make it out of. I really just didn't like how Maki fought Naoya, then fought Naoya, and both times were either right before or after a power-up. Not to say that the things that did happen were bad, just that I think a little fluff, just a little, would have made it feel a little better. Honestly, my first thought when Naoya showed up was, I hope he tosses Maki like 4 colonies away, just kicks her, punts her across the screen, so she gets stuck dealing with something else while Noritoshi Kamo has to try and deal with this worm. Of course, that was before, it was revealed that the worm was Naoya. The last stretch is with Kenjaku versus Choso and Yuki, as well as the armies joining the Culling Games. Let's be real for a sec. I get that the army joining was meant to be like a battery or something to add more cursed energy into the games by having all these people get slaughtered, but I think everyone would have wanted to see a little more from these guys. I won't say any of this is wasted potential, but I think at the very least it would have gone, a long way. It would have been nice if the army guys that Yuji and Megami at least ran into, put up a fight and we got to see it, even if it was short. That one chapter ended and Megami's like, that didn't go anywhere. Megami was posted up like he was about to do him dirty, only for the following chapter to begin with those guys already beaten and giving up the info that Yuji and Megami needed. It would have been really cool if maybe one army guy was dope and either got a decent fight or joined the good guys just to provide support or provide the sorcerers with flashbangs or something, grenades, anything. As far as Kenjaku versus Tengen's bodyguards, nearly perfect. I don't mind how the fight or any of the things played out. I just wish we could have explored Yuki's character just a tiny bit more. Whether, that be by showing flashbacks with Todo or more conversations with Tengen, since she was able to hear the voices of the people fused with Tengen, or hell, just showing off her meeting with Toji, since she said at some point he rejected her request to research his body, or like, how the hell does she know about Mahito? She mentioned him to Yuji in Shibuya, and even characters like LaRue were working for her. What was she doing all this time while she was away, and how did she escape her fate of being merged with Tengen? I think answering literally any of those questions around the time she fought and died would have made people feel a lot better about this arc. Back to civilians a little bit. In chapter 211, we do actually see more civilians. Even the guy that worked at that restaurant Kenjaku met with the Cursed family in earlier on in the series, but these people were all living their normal lives, it seems. Almost as if a massive battle royale death game wasn't going on right now, and I think we could have gotten a scene of all of those people getting taken out by curses or something. The part of the games with Sukuna says in chain and takes Megami's body was dope. Everything there was great except the Angel and Hannah stuff. I don't really know what could have been done here besides killing Hannah, but by doing so, that removes Gojo's exit from the prison realm, as well as Yuta being able to copy Jacob's ladder, and then the moment in a recent chapter where Hannah shows up again to use Jacob's ladder, but thanks to Sukuna ripping off her arm, 50 or so chapters earlier, instead of killing her, she's able to fire it off at slightly lower, output, just enough to damage him so he can climb his way up to take her out. Angel really is a weird case because without her, a lot of things don't happen in the story, but it also doesn't make sense to have Sukuna not kill her. I guess you could say he thought he did kill her by chucking her off a building, but still, it's really convenient that the one person with the perfect technique for destroying him was just wounded and unable to heal her arm. I don't have much else to say about Angel. I know a lot of readers hated her for falling for Sukuna's cheap tricks, as well as being the focus of that one very weird moment where Yuji tells Megami he doesn't like that it feels like Megami's replaced Nobara with her. That could have honestly just not happened at all, and the manga would be better for it. A lot better. Speaking of Nobara, it felt like she was a character that Gege really wasn't sure about and wanted to keep her fate ambiguous just in case he would later think of a good entrance for her return, like I did with Miguel and LaRue. Unfortunately, this was one of the things that the community will always be split on, because some fans will say it's super obvious that she was always dead, which is of course super easy to say now that we're, right at the end of the story, and apparently in an interview Gege sort of confirmed her death, but did so in a way that still wasn't. At this point in my notes, or the script I wrote, yes, she's dead for good, and it felt like to me there was a 5% chance of her coming back. She did come back. I don't know, the Nobara Dangle thing, just was weird, and I would have loved to see her, her return, but it'd be like her waking up from a coma. Maybe have her be woken up by Kenjaku when he entered into people's dreams to escort them from the games. But have this happen with Nobara, and then she wakes up and she's in the boonies at her village, which would have likely been one of the northern colonies, and then, have her protect her people, and then have her make her way down to where Yuji and everybody else is. It could have gone somewhere. Other than that, I really don't have anything to say or change about the games, minus a few more times people, add rules to make their player hunting easier. If you made it this far, you're a champion, and I want to thank you. Again, I said before, I'm no author, and this is in no way me trying to make a better story than Gege, just some thoughts and ideas on how I would have made a few of the bumpy roads a little more smooth. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to support the channel. Don't forget to check out the podcast that I mentioned earlier. If you're into stuff like Don to Don, Ranger Reject, Kagurabachi, Astro Royale, man, what do we cover like 9 things. Go check out the podcast, man, for real. Don't ignore that. It's in my pinned, it's in my community section, it's everywhere. Let me know below what you think. You probably hate this video because how dare I, but hopefully you get that I'm not, trying to be like that. Anyway, thanks for watching.